Guys and gals, so I received a Skype message from a person yesterday who was looking for some help, and I attempted to help them, but they wanted to show me what they were trying to do, and then they showed me that they were trying to model an aircraft carrier for the monthly contest over on the Blender Artist Forum, and that instantly sparked my interest. If you guys aren't aware, I'm building a naval simulator. So the user was having some problems kind of figuring out how to start and what the best ways are to basically get started modeling. It's a very ambitious project, modeling an aircraft carrier. There's reasons why aircraft carrier models are, you know, $400, $500, $600 plus on Turbo Squid. There's reasons why I spend months at a time on each of my boats and for my game. But I'm going to show you today how to get started using the blueprints I was given, and just some basic things to remember and to think of, and some basic techniques for getting started. I'm not going to go too long. I haven't done a video in a long time. I'm clearly out of practice. And so yeah, let's get started. So I have reset to factory settings. I had them changed dramatically for modeling in Unreal Engine. So anyways, we are going to need our blueprint. Now, this is the blueprint I was given by the user. And you might think it's a good blueprint because it has the left and right views as well as the front and back, which, don't get me wrong, is nice, but it's a very low quality. The lines are very jagged. You can tell it was scanned many times over. The top view, oddly, is actually quite nice, but it appears that things don't quite line up perfectly to scale. I can't confirm that because I haven't spent a lot of time with it. This needs to be flipped around, obviously. You can see the little emergency nets here are over here on this picture on this side. And so I try to see if these line up, and yeah, everything needs to be flipped around basically to see if it lines up. But we'll work with it. What I would do personally is take it into Photoshop and cut it out, but we'll work with what we have. I'll work exactly like the user was. So what the user had done was imported this blueprint as either a blueprint or an image plane. I can't remember, but since I'm on stock settings, we're going to import it as a blueprint as soon as I turn on screencast keys. Now that I have screencast keys turned on, I'm also gonna do a few other ones that are extremely useful. F2 for filling in meshes. Okay, that's enabled by stock. That's great. And loop tools, that's enabled by stock. Great. Or my user settings were still saved. Either way, those are two add-ons that are fairly essential to modeling, making your modeling life easier in Blender. So let's turn on screencast keys. I'm sure that'll work for our session today. So let's create a background image. So I'm going to turn background images on. I'm going to add 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, since we have all 4 views of the ship. And so for the first one, I'm going to set its axis to left, the next one to right, then to top, and then lastly the axis is going to be front. So we have left, right, top, and front. But since we have the back two, we might as well add a 5th one in and select back. So we have front, back, top, left, and right. Now we're going to open the same image for all of them. Now, like I said, what I would usually do is I would cut it up in Photoshop, but I'll show you how to get around that. So I'm just going to select the same image for every single axis. And now I'm going to minimize these panels just so we can see a little better, and we're going to work one side at a time. Now, since I haven't worked with this image before, I don't know if it's to scale, so we have to find out manually. I'm going to delete the cube, the camera, the light, just so it's not our way. So let's go to right hand view, that's 3. Now you'll see our image doesn't show up. That's because we're in perspective mode. You cannot look at a 2D image, a blueprint, in perspective mode. To fix that, we press numpad 5 to go into orthographic. And you'll see that our blueprint shows up. So what we want to have, or what I do anyway, is I take the right hand side view, which would be, I guess that would be the starboard side, which would be over here, but no, sorry, I'm wrong. That would be this side. It's hard to tell from the drawings. No, that would be the port side. Either way, this is the one facing in the right direction, I believe. I'm not 100% sure what aircraft carrier this is, but that is most definitely the bow shape. That is the stern. That is the bow. So this is definitely pointed in the right direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that image. So we're going to take our right side, which is what we're in, right orthographic, and we're going to move it over. We're basically going to get it lined up with the grid. So we're going to move it along the X till it lines up somewhere about 3.15 maybe. We'll tweak it after. We'll go up in the Y. We'll get it right on the grid floor. As you can see, this image isn't set up perfectly. All the views should line up perfectly, but that's okay. We'll just get the bottom of the ship sitting, the keel resting on the grid floor line. So we'll just keep tweaking it. So it's in between 1.5 and 1.6. We'll go 1.55. That's close enough for me. And it looks like the tip of the bow is just barely touching. I'll bring it negative a little bit, so maybe I'll go 0.145. That should do. So now we have our right side blueprint lined up, and we can work off of that. Now we will go to the front. So to switch the front view, we'll go to front view 1. Now we have the same image, and this is why I don't like working with a single blueprint image sorry, for all my views, is it's very confusing and everything I find gets in the way. But anyways, we'll work exactly as user had. So we'll take front, and again we're going to play with the X and Y, and we're going to line it up right on the grid line, except this time we're going to center it. Since this boat is going to be built down the middle, as you would do most modeling, we're going to center it right down the middle. Now we don't have this isn't a top-notch quality blueprint in that we don't have any mark that shows where the horizontal line is. So without going into Photoshop and measuring, I'm just gonna guess it's either the flag on the stern or front here, or this is actually the back view. Sorry, I'm looking at the propellers. So we're looking at the front view here. We don't have a dividing line, so I'm going to assume it's just right in the middle of the bow here. So and since this is such a low quality blueprint, it's even harder to line up. So we're just gonna rough guess, maybe 4.25, a little bit less, 4.2, a little bit more than 4.2125, a little bit less, 4.212. A little bit less, 4.211. Let's see here. A little bit less, 4.21. A little bit less, 4.205. A little bit more, 4.2075. That's about bang on. So just play with your X value till it's lined up right down the the Z axis. Now we need to get it lined up on the grid floor so it's level. So we're going to bring it down in the Y. So again, just like we did on the right side, we're going to get the keel laying right on the grid floor. So I'm going to get as close as I can with the arrows, and then I'm going to type in values manually. So I know it's got to come up a little more, so it's in between 1.8 and 1.7, closer to 1.8, so I'm going to try negative 1.79. It's a little too much, but very close, so I'm going to go 1795. That'll be close enough for our work. So as you can see, it's lined up on the X line and on the Z line. If you ever have a hard time seeing with your blueprints, you can always turn the opacity down with the opacity meter. I also like to go into Photoshop when I work with blueprints, and I like to take all of the white space and get rid of it completely and make a transparent image. That way all this white is gone and it makes modeling much easier. Anyways, on to the next view. So we have front and right view set up. Front and right. You can see how those views get very confusing. But anyways, we will now move on to, I guess we might as well do the back since I had that all ready. So we're going to move to the back next. So I'll close that. I'll bring the back up, and we're just going to move it. We're going to center it. It should actually be the same value because it looks like they line it up pretty close. So what did we use for the front? 4.207. I'll put that right into the back value, 4.207 on the X. That's way off. This blueprint is not lined up nicely. Let's try, we need to come positive a little. 4.3. Sorry, negative. Let's try 4.1. Nope. 4.25. Way too much. 4.175. That's getting close. A little bit more. 4.19. A little bit less, sorry. 4.15. A little bit less, or a little bit more. 4.16. You gotta remember we're working in reverse here. That is close enough. You know what? Maybe I'll line up the flagpole. That should be pretty center. 4.165. 4.1. Whoops. 4.16. We'll go 7.5. We'll go a little bit further. We'll go 8.5. That should be centered enough for us. You can see how off it is on the blueprint. It's not lined up at the front at all. Anyway, so I'm going to assume that's the center. It's roughly in between the two screws and with the propeller, or with the rudder, sorry. Now we need to get it up on the grid floor. So we're going to move it up. I actually got us pretty much bang on right with the arrows. A little bit less than 1.8. So I'm going to go 1.7 or 1.975. Whoa, totally the wrong direction. .775, sorry. A little too much. 1.795. There we go. That's bang right on the bottom, right on the keel. Perfect. So that one's lined up. So we have back, which is control 1, by the way. Front, right. So let's go to the left now, which is control 3. And so we want to get the starboard side, which again I'm a little bit confused too, but this would be the port side if that's the bow. This would be the left side if that's the bow. However, we are going to run into some issues, but I will get to that in a minute. But luckily, Blender has some new features, or I never noticed them before, where we can flip an image horizontally and vertically. But anyways, we'll close off back and we will go to left side. So we need to bring it down on the Y, obviously. Get the keel laying on there nicely. We need to bring it over positive in the X. We'll get the stern lined right up against, you know what, that's so close. I'm just going to sit with those values. Negative 1.8 in the Y and 3.1 in the X. Whoops. And so lastly, the top. Now, this is where things can get tricky. We'll close that and we'll go to the top view. Now, Blender has some nice settings, flip horizontally and flip vertically. They also have a rotation setting. I believe this is totally new and it's very good because like I said before, I would have had to take this into Photoshop to do these adjustments, or Paint, or whatever you use, because you have to think of it like this. If we go to our right hand view, which is what we'll be doing most of our modeling from, the bow of the ship is at the very front. It's in the negative y direction. So if you look at our axis panel in the bottom, we have positive z going up and down, obviously, but we have positive y going to the right and negative y going to the left. And if I rotate it around, you would see that we have positive x coming out to the right from there. So I'm actually going to pretend I'm in top view and just move the cursor over to positive x, positive y. So you can see how that's in the positive x and positive y direction. Now if I go to top view, that's 7. Notice that it's in this corner exactly like it should be. You can see that it's in the positive y and the positive x. However, if we try to line, we have the top view open. If we try to line the top view up, I'm just going very roughly because this is obviously 100% wrong. Think about it. If we go from a side view to a top view, that needs to be flipped, because from the top view we're looking down. The right view's right on this side, the left view's on this side, the front view's over here, the back view's back here. Essentially, you got to think of how the ship is built. Since we put the bow of the ship, when we go to right view, since we put the bow right on the front there, right on the line, we need to have the bow right here of the top view right on the X right here and centered, since the top view works the same way as the front and back. So what we're going to do is, since we're in the top view now, we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. That will flip it. That's exactly what we want. This will make more sense as we get a little further in. So now we are in our top view. We're going to move our values. We're going to line it up right on the edge. Don't know if I want to use the elevator as a reference point. I think the side of the boat would be a better one, but we still have some more adjusting to do, don't worry. So maybe 2.85. Yeah, we'll just start there for now because we've got some fine tuning to do, and then we'll bring it up on the Y so it lines up with the X axis. It's between 7.4 and 7.5 almost exactly, so I'll go 7.45. A little bit less 744, a little bit less 743. Whoops, put 2. 743 will work. Perfect. Okay, so now you can think of it that this point right here is the bow of the boat. I want to go to right hand view. Look at that. It's lined up perfectly right with the tip of the bow of the boat. That's exactly how we want it. Alright, so now that we have our blueprints lined up, we need to do some tests. You can see setting up blueprints is not the easiest thing in the world if you don't already have blueprints that are already set up for you. So, and that's why this can become an hour-long video in itself, but I'm trying to go through it as quickly as possible. So we have a few we have a lot of landmarks on a carrier that we can use. Unfortunately, this blueprint doesn't have a lot of detail, but that's good. You don't want a blueprint to have a lot of detail. You want a blueprint to just give you the general shape of an object, and then you use real-life reference photos after to add in the details. The more detail you have in your blueprint like this, the more confusing. I look at this and I go, what the heck is that, you know? Like, is it windows on the bridge? Is it, you know, what is it? Is it paint? You know, it's, and unfortunately a lot of these blueprints come from model kit models, plastic models, and so they're a very low quality, made in some printing press in a third world country usually, and generally they're offset and scanned in and warped, and so yeah, just some things to be aware of. Anyway, so we need to find a reference point. So I'm gonna work on the front first. So on the front, we have the flag. Actually, that's not centered at all, is it? So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go flip right back to my back view. I'm gonna open that up. I'm gonna go to my back view, Control 1. Since we see that the flagpole is not centered with the center of the boat, what we're actually going to do is we're going to, whoops, sorry, back to back view, we're going to line it up with a rudder, which I think would be a little bit less. So let's try 4.15. There's just no middle view. I could always assume that they're lined up, but I probably am wrong. Possibly not. They look pretty close, but we'll find out. So, you know what? Let's use the exact same value we used for the front. Let's use that 4.207. So we'll assume that that is the center of the boat, because it is for the front. We'll assume it is on the back. We'll assume the blueprint maker at least did us the courtesy of that. I'm going to assume wrong, but we'll find out, because now we know the flagpole's definitely not off. So anyways, looking at the blueprint in any view, like I said, I need to find a landmark that I can check on at least 2 of the views. So yes, the flagpole does come to mind very quickly. So in front view, number 1, I'm going to select the flagpole. Your front, top, and right view are your most important. So that's what I check first. So I'm going to put my 3D cursor right where the flagpole is. Now, if we look at our top view, press 7, there's no indication of where this flagpole is. And since I don't know exactly what aircraft carrier this is, I don't know where it would be on the top, and I don't see it anywhere. So I can't select it on the top, unfortunately. But what I can do, going back to front view, we know that we have our 3D cursor lined up with the flagpole tip. I'm going to go to side view, the right side, and make sure that it is lined up with the flagpole in this way. Now, it would be right on the dot if we had a top view that we could go to, but we don't. So we just have to make sure that it's lined up in this axis. Now, it looks like it's about right bang on, so I'm going to assume that that's good. Now, the other thing we can do is switch to back view, Control 1, and it should line up right with the tip of the flagpole, which it doesn't. So I'm going to actually use that as a reference to fix the back, since we don't have a center line for it. So I'm going to go into the back again, and I'm going to tweak it so that, because we know that this 3D cursor point in the front view, if I go there again, if I go to 1, we know that it's right on the tip of the flagpole. So if I go to the back, I'm going to do it so it's exactly the same without moving the 3D cursor. So about 4.3, a little bit less, 4.295, and a little bit high, or a little bit lower, sorry. Yeah, right about 1.69, or sorry, 1.7. Maybe a little more, 1.7125. So that's right on the tip of the flagpole. So we know that's lined up in that axis at the very least. So I will work with that for now. So we have the back, the front. So next we have to pick something else that's prominent, preferably something that we can select in all 3 views. I notice on the back we have these 2 antennas or whatever, but we don't on the front. They got erased, but we do on the side view. Now, something that I do notice offhand is the little radar or antenna dish, whatever you want to call it. Most likely radar on a boat like this at the top of the mast. So it looks like the major one, the big one right there, we have on the front and the back views, and we also have on not so much on the left view, but on the right view, whoops, sorry again. Otherwise, we have the sonar dome, but we only have that on the back view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 3D cursor in right side view. Make sure I'm in right side view. I'm going to put my 3D cursor right on the top of that radar dish. Now I'm going to move to top view, because I noticed that we have it on there too. I'm going to put it right on the tip of the radar dish, like that. Now I'm going to move to front view, and it should line up perfectly but it doesn't. So what that means is one of our views is off. Now, knowing that my right view, it lines up just fine. My top view, where are we? Lines up just fine. That means most likely our front view is not to scale. It should be much smaller, I guess. Oh, sorry, you know what I didn't do is I didn't center the top view. Obviously, like I said, I'm out of practice. We need to center the top view so that it's right down the middle. Now we have this nice line right down the middle, whether it's used for the runway or whatever, or if it's in the drawing, I cannot tell you. Actually, that looks like a runway line, sorry. So I'm going to... Actually, you know what? That looks like a blueprint line right there, that dotted line. So I'm going to line it up with that. That will definitely cause errors. So 2.1, maybe, nope, 2.15, 2.175. So you can see you can spend hours tweaking 2.185, 2.195, 2.19. That'll be close enough for me. All right, now we can look a little closer. So if we go to right view, and again, put it on that radar tower, right on the tip, move to the top view. Now we can see that it is indeed closely aligned, but not quite. So things are out of proportion. So this would take some moving around or even editing in Photoshop. We're gonna move it to the tip of the radar dish, then go to front view. Now you can see that it is indeed lined up in this axis, but it's a little bit too low as far as we can tell. If we go to right view, you can see that it's right there, but if we go to top view, it's fine. Oops, that's gonna ruin it. Let me just set that back. So right view, line it up, top view, set it, and front view, we can see it's way off. So again, check right view, it's lined up, top view, it's lined up, but front view, it's not. So one of these or some of these have to get scaled. So the first thing I'm going to check, since we now know that these blueprints are out of scale, is just the general proportions of the boat. So I'm going to go back to right view. I'm going to select the very tip of the bow, the top of the deck at the tip of the bow. Then I'm going to go to top view. I'm going to make sure it lines up there. It does indeed. I'm going to put it right in the center, so that'll help us from the front view, but we can see that it's basically right on the line, so it's close enough. I'm going to put it in the center. So if we go back to right view, we can see it's still in the same spot because you have to think in 3D space. So right view, top view, we can see that it's right on the tip of the bow. Now I'm going to go to front view. Now it looks like the bow is actually right where it should be roughly, so that's good. So let's do our next check. Let's go to right view. Let's check the keel, the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right, since we don't really have any, like we don't have a bulbous bow or anything, I'm just going to put it on the bottom of the bow roughly. Now top view, obviously we have no way of checking that because we can't see the bottom, so we'll just assume that's right. We'll move to the front. It's bang on, so that's good. That is actually very reassuring. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to top view. I'm going to move right to the very rightmost point, and we'll do the leftmost, which appears to be this safety net. So we'll click there, and then we'll go to front view. And as we can see, that's way off in Wonderland. So obviously that's not lined up right, or that's not shown in the front of the blueprint. So let's just choose the side of the boat and see if that fixes things. So go to front view. We can see, sorry, I need to put it right on the deck line, and in right view we'll put it right on the deck line. Top view, it's now on the deck in the Z value, and then I'm just going to choose the very furthest point of the deck in top view. Then I'm going to go to front view. Now we can see that it looks close, pretty close, so I'll work with that. We'll go back to top view. We'll pick the leftmost point, which would be this elevator. We'll see if they've modeled that or drawn that in somewhere around there. We'll go to front view, and that actually lines up very well. So actually that does work. So actually I was measuring the radar mast incorrectly. So the general proportions of the front and sides of the boat are correct. Now we should check the back just to be sure. So I'm going to put my 3D cursor right about the back tip. So we know that's at the back in the X and Z direction. Then I'm going to move to the top view again. And it is all over the place. So I'm going to put it right at the back of the ship. Dead center, so we can see this is the furthest it goes. This is the center point right here for the ship. So I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to go to front view. We can see that it does line up vertically, but we can see it's obviously not lined up where it should be. It should be, where did we put it on the right view? See, now it's all over the place. So again, I'm going to go to the very corner of the ship. Let's check out front view maybe. So this is in right view, front view. It looks to be right. It's lined up with the deck just like we put it. I'm going to go to top view, and it looks like it's roughly lined up. It could be a little off. It's hard to tell with carriers. We'll assume that's right. So we do know that at least the general proportions of the ship are right. Now, I'm not going to go into any more detail, but what you want to do is you want to just take points of interest on your blueprint and make sure that they're right. So let's say, for example, that, well, it's a good example. The little anti-aircraft guns, maybe. They don't really show too well on the front. Let's look at the top view. I mean, we could set it to the center of the superstructure roughly. Go to the side view, the right view, put it in the center top of the superstructure, then go to front view, and it should be in roughly the same area. Go to back view, it should be in roughly the same area. We can see the back view's obviously way off. So again, we have to fix the back view up. I'm just going to eyeball it for now, holding down shift for more precision so that it's generally centered in the superstructure. So this shows you how it works. We can see that it's centered about right there in the back. If we go to front, it's centered about right there. If I go to right, it's centered about right there. And if we go to top, it's centered about right there. So that's how you want to check. And you want to check that all over the boat. For example, I do have the sonar dome on the back. So I'll go right on the top of the sonar dome. In the right view, I'll go to the top view. I'll put it right on the tip. We have a nice line for that at least. I'll put it right on the tip. I'll go back to the side view. You can see it's off a little bit. Not a big deal, but I still like accuracy, but I'm not going to worry about it. We'll go to the front view. We don't have a view of it, but if we go to the back view, we can see that the back view is now way out of whack. So obviously we can see that the keel isn't lined up, so we need to bring the keel up. Holding down shift for more precision. We're in back view. Perfect. With the keel lying right on the X line, we can see that it's lined up nicely. So that's just one quick check. The reason I bring this up and I spend so much time on it is usually blueprints aren't exactly to scale. I know this one isn't exactly to scale. It's actually quite close though, luckily. But if you click on a place in side view, go to top view and find its corresponding point and click on it, and then you go to front view and it's way off, that means that you have to scale your blueprint up. Whoops, I'm using the wrong one. Oh, now I can't put that back. Shoot. What's the stock size? 5 still, right? Yeah, okay, perfect. So that means I would have to go to, we're in front view and it's all over. Let me look at that again. Oh, I was clicking in the wrong place possibly. So yeah, let's say that there was a pole right here or something that, let's say there was a gun right here that we could use as an example. Let's say this was the top of the gun. I would click on it in the side view, I'd go to the top view, and then let's say that the gun was right here on the edge of the deck. I would click right there, then I'd go back to side view, make sure it's still lined up. Yep, it's still where our imaginary gun is. I'll go to front view, and if the gun was right there, perfect. You know your blueprint is to scale. If not, you would need to take the front view or the other two views and size them appropriately. Now this is where it can get very tough, because when you're sizing a whole blueprint, you can see that it sizes the entire image. That's why I like working just with the images cut out on their own. But anyways, this blueprint seems fairly fine. It seems like we've set it up to its rough values. So if you've skipped over the rest of the video, or the entire video, because I've rambled on and going too much about blueprints. I love blueprints. I love blueprints. Anyways, so we have the same size on all of them, 5. The back, or sorry, the left is, which we didn't check at all, but it should be about the same as the right. 3.1, negative 1, 3.1, and on the X, and on the Y, negative 1.8. For the right, we've got 3.145 on the X and 1.550 on the Y. On the top, we've got 2.190 and 7.430. On the front, we've got 4.207 and negative 1.795. And on the back, we've got 4.145 and 1.793 on the Y. Now, one last thing I want to bring up with the blueprints, I'm sorry to have taken so long, is left versus right. So we have right view and we have left view. We never set up our left view. So if we go to our right view, what we can do is we can pick a point of the boat to help us line it up. So I'm going to take the very tip of the bow of the ship in right view. I'm going to go to top view. I'm going to put it dead center. I'm going to go back to right view, make sure it's still lined up. Yep, it's right about where it should be. I'm going to go to front view. It's about where it should be. I'm going to go to back view. It looks like it's about where it should be. Now we go to left view, Control 3. And look at that, it is almost lined up, but there's one problem. We have the stern here instead of the bow, and we know the bow should be there. Because if we were to, let me show you an example. I'm going to add a cube there to show this a little better. So I'm going to put a cube at the stern, because we're in left view, it should be at the stern, centered, because we centered it everywhere else. So now if we go to right view, it's on the bow. If we go to top view, it's on the bow. If we go to front view, it's on the bow. So it's on the bow in all views. Top view, bow, front, back. Well, we can't tell from the back, obviously, right and left. So that's actually good that it's reversed, because I wanted to bring up the point that if they had put the bow at the front, what you would have had to do is take the left side and flipped it horizontally so that it would have been pointed properly. So sometimes it can help too to just use shapes to help you get a better sense of it too. But anyway, so yeah, everything is set up fairly decent. So let's get into some basics of setting up a ship for, well, we've set up the ship for modeling with blueprints. Let's get into how we would model this. I'm going to look at the side view first because that's the most prominent profile. You're going to work in setting up the shape with the side and front view first to get the hull shape, and the top view to get the what do you call it, the top down profile. You want the profile on all the views. Now there's different ways people do it. Some people take just a single vertice, so I'll just merge all of these. I now have a single come on, where are you? It's hard to see. We now have a single vertex we use. Some people like to take it and just constantly extrude, and since the user is doing this for a render, it doesn't matter how many n-gons they have, and then they'll trace the entire ship bit by bit. I'll just do this very quickly in a very rough shape. I'm gonna forget the superstructure for now. I'm just gonna work with the deck, or I'm just gonna work with the hull essentially. Fill those 2 points in, fill that side in. So we now have the profile, and when you're working with blueprints, you're generally nearly always in a wireframe view. So we now have the right profile. If we go to the left side, Control 3, we can see that that's obviously not in the right place. So either our model's off, or we're gonna have to flip our image and move it. And then if we go to front view, we can see that it is lined up horizontally, but what some people might do is they might, or let's check out top view first. We can see it's right down the middle. So what some people might do is they might go to front view, grab it along the X till they're at the edge of the hull roughly, and then they might extrude that box across. Go to the top view. They'll say, okay, that's about the right shape. They might, and this is what the user was trying to do, kind of. They might say, okay, now I'll take the knife tool and I'll start cutting sections away. So I'll just roughly draw out some sections. Blender's new knife tool is a little bit buggy. So I'm going to press Z to make sure it's going to cut all the way through. I'm going to complete my cut by going right to the last dot. So it's done now. I'm going to hit enter. As you can see, it's cut that section away, but it hasn't cut through here because we didn't have the geometry, or the knife tool didn't just work. So if I delete those vertices, yeah, it just turns into a mess. So probably not the best way to go about it, but that is a way that you can start. You see, if we go to the back view, it's generally lined up with the right shape. Top view, but if we go to left hand view, you can see that it's not right. So what we are going to have to do, in fact, is flip the image and move it over to the other side, but we won't worry about that. Generally, I don't ever use a left view. Anyways, how I go about modeling something like this is I go and I roughly center my cursor in all 3 primary views, top, front, and left. So that's the top, bow, or sorry, that's the front. Let's go make sure we're on the front view. I'm going to go to the rough center of the bow and the hull. So that's the center, bow, nose, whatever you want to call it, of the hull. I'm going to go to the side view, the right view, and I'm going to put it right in the same area. Go back to the front view, make sure it hasn't moved out too much, make sure it's still roughly centered. I'm going to go to top view. I'm going to make sure it's centered, but I'm going to move it right to the very tip. Now if we go to front view, we can see it's at the very tip. That'll work for us because we're gonna be cutting that section out anyway. So now what I do is I go to front view. I would add a mesh cube. I will go into solid, or no, I'll stick in wireframe mode, but you know that it's obviously a cube. Just like that. So I would scale it down, and then I would go into, or still scale along the X, just get the rough shape of the hull somewhere around there. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm just going to grab these 4 vertices, making sure I'm grabbing the ones behind it. All 4, I'm going to grab it along the Z so that it lines up about with the deck, which is about right there. And then I'm going to go to side view, and we have our cube. That's just all fine and dandy. Actually, let's go to top view first. Our cube is obviously, it's centered, but it's way too far forward. So I'm going to grab it along the Y, and I'm going to line it up with our top view. So we know that that's the very, we know that that's the very, very tip of the bow. That's the nose of the ship. Go to front view, it's still the nose. Go to right view, it's the nose. Now I'm going to go into edit mode, select these 4 vertices. I'm going to grab it along the Y, and I'm going to go right to the back of the ship. Just roughly. Now if we go to top view, it should go right to the back, so you can see it's pretty darn close. So we have, you may not think it, but that is the rough, that is the first step in making the hull of a carrier. Now how I go about modeling back in wireframe mode is I start making loop cuts at prominent points. So for example, I want this nice curved bow shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add loop cuts. Now I use loop cuts that I actually have a hotkey bound to it on my mouse because I use them so often, but the hotkey is Control R. Now if you won't see it until I move into edit mode and go Control R, you'll see that it makes a cut right at the center, but when I click I can move it anywhere I want. However, if I right click, it puts it right at the center, and so that's a loop cut right down the center. The other thing you can do with loop cuts is you can use your mouse wheel to scroll up and it will cut it into equal shapes. So one thing to remember is, even though this isn't for a game engine, and so quads and triangles and n-gons don't matter, you can use whatever you like, it's best to always use quads. That is a face made out of 4 vertices. One just like this, 4 single vertices, because that will allow you to put loop cuts wherever and whenever you want. You can see that I can make cuts out of this ship however I want and add or remove detail accordingly. So let me show you exactly how I would go about this just to start. So I'll undo all those, whoops. We'll redo the rough shape of the ship, there we go. Okay, so we're in edit mode and I want to get this nice bow outline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a loop cut. Now it's going to start at the center. If you try to do it from the front, you're not going to see anything because we don't have it cut yet. So I'm going to move it just roughly to that point. Now I can zoom into there. Now here's a little trick. When you have a loop cut selected, which by the way, it's a loop cut, it's all the way around, it goes all the way around. That's why they call it a loop cut. But it may look like a line, obviously, in orthographic mode. One thing to notice is when you have one selected, which by the way, if I deselect, if you want to select a loop cut without selecting all 4 vertices, all you have to do, is just hit Alt and then right click on it anywhere and it will select that loop cut. But a little trick here, if you want to move your loop cut, just double tap G quickly. So just listen to my keyboard. I double tap G. Now I can slide that loop cut along these lines and it will follow that line exactly. So just something to take note of. So I'm actually going to use that technique right here because I didn't line it up on purpose. So I'm going to double tap G. I'm going to go right to where that bow curve ends. Now I can add loop cuts right in here since that's cut out right there and we have geometry right in this section. So I'm going to make another vertical one. I'm going to slide it over to where it starts to really get quite flat, right about there. And that should be about all I need. Now I'm going to work on horizontal loop cuts. I'm going to make one right about at the tip of the deck here. And I'm going to make one, say, somewhere around here. I'm going to make one, we'll go right on the water line that it's laid out. I'm going to make one right in the middle here, but where it curves, and I'm going to make two right in that curve there. Now, a lot of people don't like this technique because it creates all these extra loop cuts back here, which can get confusing if you're not careful. And an aircraft carrier is one of the hardest ships, to model. But this is just the method I use, and I find it works quite well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to very simply start deleting stuff. So I'm going to select all of these ones we know we don't need and delete. Or sorry, I need more loop cuts. So I'm also going to add I'm going to add a loop cut right about, well, we know where the bow starts. We know we put one where it ends right there. So I'm going to leave one right in the middle, and then I'm going to put a few to split that apart. So now I'm going to start deleting these completely empty parts that we know we don't need at all. And we don't need these ones. However, I accidentally deleted too much. We need a loop cut right in there as well. I'll delete this a little more carefully this time. So we can get rid of that one, we can get rid of that one, we can get rid of that one. We can get rid of those ones. I believe that is what we need. So now what you would do is you would grab, making sure again that you've got both of those selected because we're making the bow shape. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to move it right into position to follow the outline. I'm going to grab these two. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line that up, maybe move this around to give it that kind of better curved view. And right here, I'm going to move these ones to about in there. Sorry, these ones we don't even need, I don't think. Take this one and move it down here to follow this line. I'm going to take this one and take it to follow that line. I'm going to take this one and make it follow the line. Take this one to follow the line. Now you don't want your lines getting too wiggly on you, but this is a general way to get what we need. Take this one and get it to follow the nice curved line there. Bring this one up to do, bring these two up. Remember, we're doing both sides at once. This one we don't need. Take this and drag it down. This is a little bit, I believe it's something like that though. I might bring this up to there, and then I might take this down to here. I might take these ones down to here. You know, maybe start giving it a curve till it gets to deck level. Obviously I made it a little too high, but whatever, we can deal with it later. So we have the general shape of our bow. Now I did that very quickly and dirtily, but as you can see, we now have a bow shape. If we go to front view, however, it does not line up. So what I would have to do is take the vertices and line them up accordingly. I have to take this corner and grab it along the X to where it lines up. I'd have to take this one and grab it along the X to where it lines up. And I have to do this one at a time, making sure I'm selecting the right ones, which I'm most likely not. I'm just going to try to follow the outline here and see if it happens to work out. Oops, back to front view. Now we would need more detail to get this curve in here, but I can roughly put it in there by moving that one. I'm going to move these ones straight over. And I'm going to turn on vertex snapping by going down to our snapping options and going to vertex. Now I'm going to grab, just like this, I'm going to grab along the X. But if I hold down Control, you'll notice if I go hover over a vertex, it snaps to it. Notice how it's perfectly in line with those vertices now. If I go over here, it's perfectly in line with those ones. I'm going to vertex snap it to that point. And again, I really have no idea exactly how this is set up, but I'm just going to guess something like that, maybe. And I would have to do the same thing for the other side. So now if we look at the general shape of our boat, we can see that we have this rough outline of our hull. Now obviously that's not the shape of the carrier, but you have to ignore everything except the front. If we go to the side view, you can see it lines up nicely. Now obviously I messed up and these ones should have been brought back out. So that's where you need to know your boat, look at reference pictures. You know, I don't know exactly what boat this is. I'm just doing this very quickly and roughly. But we have the general hull shape. Actually, this side looks a lot nicer. I would use that. You know, it's a lot about just moving vertexes one by one by one a lot of the time. You know, I might line this back up along the Z. I might grab this along the X to line up with that. Give us that kind of boxy but curved shape. Might grab this one along the X a little bit, this one along the X a little bit, just give it that nice curve up there. And you know what, I actually like that shape right there, but I realize I kind of screwed up on the right hand side. So here's a quick trick. Because we use the loop cuts, I can put a loop cut right down the center, click, so that it's right in the center. Then what I can do, I'll go into wireframe, I can select everything to the right of that. Then I can add a mirror modifier. I can actually turn off the end menu. We don't need our blueprints anymore. I'll go back into, solid. I can add a mirror modifier. And now we get that same shape on the other side. So I'll apply it in object mode. And now we have that to work with, but now we have this cut down the middle, which probably comes in useful, but we can get rid of that by alt clicking, remember loop cut, and it didn't combine right in the middle there. You can see it created an issue, so to fix that, we would want to add our mirror modifier again, make sure clipping's on, make sure everything's combined, which it's not. So I'm just gonna simply go into wireframe, go to top, well, I'll go to any view really. That's roughly the top. I'm going to take all these vertices. Whoops, not those ones. I want just the center vertices. For some reason they didn't get perfectly aligned. I selected them by accident. I'm going to right along the X. Clipping is on, yes. Grab it right along the X. It shouldn't be going over like that. Those ones are fixing. Those ones snap together. Those ones, why is that one snapping over? Just bring everything right to the center. Just clearly I made an error in setting that up. Okay, those are all good. Those need some fixes. I'm gonna grab along the X and make sure they're centered. Now when we hit apply, we shouldn't have that error anymore. There we go. Now when I alt click on that, you can see it selects the loop cut all the way around, and I can hit X, edge loops, and it's gotten rid of it now. So we have that rough shape. So like I said, I actually like that front shape. But we have a giant hole in the front of our ship. However, it does follow the contour of the bow. So now what I might do is, again, remember, you always want quads. So this is where it gets very tedious, and I haven't done the best job of explaining this. For example, that is a terrible quad shape right there. But you just need to start filling in for, yeah, see, this is, I should grab along the Z a little bit. Go into perspective mode to maybe help, depending on your preferences. I prefer orthographic. You want to select 4 vertices at a time. Generally, they're like accompanying ones. I'll select these 4 and fill it back in. I'll show you why in a minute. We're going to select these 4. Basically, they're brothers and sisters of each other. You can see that one's not perfect either. That should probably be out there a little bit. And it's ruined there too. That should be out a little bit. I've done a horrible job at this. I would never do this way exactly, but it's a rough overline. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Now I have F2. Is that gonna fill that in? No. Fill that in. Fill that in. Fill that in. Fill that in. So we now have a completely filled shape again. Now we can select it and go to recalculate normals just to make sure our normals aren't backwards. And we have the rough, very, very rough shape of our ship started. So that's just how I would start going about it. Is I just use a lot of loop cuts, and I start pulling and pushing on them piece by piece by piece until I get the or vert by vert by vert, sorry, until I get the shape I want. So let me show you another quick example. How would I do the superstructure, for example? How would I start with that? Well, that I would most likely make a separate mesh. But if I wanted to make it the same, or on the same mesh, what I would do is I would tab into edit mode. I would add a loop cut right about where it starts, or ends, I guess, sorry. Right about where it starts. And again, since we're using loop cuts, and since we're keeping quads, that is faces with 4 vertices, we can add loop cuts wherever we want. You know, let's say we wanted to expand the ship right here. All we got to do is expand it, you know, to get that shape. In fact, actually, while I'm at it, before I do that, let's go to the top view. Notice the top view is not lining up. What we need to do here is grab these vertices and do the same thing. Move them selection by selection to line up with the blueprint. Let's see if I can get this without looking like crap on the first try. It already looks like it's all messed up though. So I didn't go about this the most proper way. I just kind of showed you a general idea, but it's kind of turned into a mess. I just slowly start with it. I'll just do that side for now. But you can see now we're starting to get that boat shape just by moving those verts around, and that actually worked out half decent. I would probably cut it down the middle and mirror it again just to make my work easier. What I generally do when I'm making something that's symmetrical is I do mirror it. I get rid of half of it and I only do half. But anyways, so yeah. An example of this is we have the deck back here that's curved. Now this is, like I said, where it can get confusing with a lot of loop cuts. So sometimes what I'll even do is I'll change my line colors to something that's not black so that I can see what's a geometry line and what's a blueprint line. But anyways, I might add a loop cut right where the deck, or right about here, that we got the takeoff deck or whatever, sorry, the landing deck, I don't even know on this specific carrier. And then somewhere about here it starts angling. And so what we need to do is we need to push and pull our geometry around to get that. Now, let's actually stick in top view. This is where it can get tricky. This is a very, very hard shape to get. You can see it's this side shape right here. So I would probably do this by going to the top view, selecting this top vertex here, and I would probably just to start make a quad 1, 2, we'll go somewhere there, 3, 1, 2, 3, oops, 1, 2, making sure we're selecting the top one, not down there, 1, 2, 3, and then somewhere back there, 4. I would start there, so we have that general shape. And then, you know, I might go down, I might extrude it down, snapping to that point. Where does it go down to? Maybe one more. Extrude it down one more, loop cut that we have. Now if we go into solid mode though, we have a hole in the top from our extrusion. So I would fill that back in. Now the beauty is we can make loop cuts all the way through it. Now obviously I've ruined the geometry somewhere. I can't make a loop cut all the way through that. Oh, I see why, because we should have made a loop cut about right there first. Then I would extrude to about that point. I'd fill that in. And then what I'd do is I'd select these 4. I'd fill that one in because we want to continue the loop cut around. So we actually want 2 faces here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, fill. Now I've created a triangle by accident. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this line. Oops. Go back to top view. Looks like we have a normal backward. But anyways, I would extrude it back, and then right at that loop, make sure that it's filled in while maintaining a quad. Fill, and like I said, it looks like we have some backwards normals, so I'm going to recalculate those. Maybe not. You can always check by going into the end panel and turning on normals. And I'll show you which direction they're facing. Yeah, these are backwards, but Blender didn't calculate them properly manually, so I would select them manually. Bring up my T panel and flip direction. Now they're facing in the right direction. Now you don't have that weird shading. So now what we can do, because we have the quads, and because we kept that line there for the edge loop, is we can extrude it down, just like we did before. Extrude those 2 levels, because we know that's about the right size. Now we can fill this in. I'll put a line right there. Come on. Right there. And so this is where the beauty of the loop cuts comes in, is yes, that's not the perfect shape, but I can add a loop cut in anywhere I want. goes all the way around. You can see, obviously, I still screwed stuff up. It's you would have to delete the inside faces. We're basically adding extra geometry. There's faces. Let's see if I can get them back there. Come on, where are you? There's faces back there that shouldn't be there. That will throw it off. I think I got the right ones. Our normals are all backwards again. There we go. But yeah, as long as you do it right, then you can add loop cuts in wherever you want. As you can see, it's still messed up. I did that the wrong way, but I just wanted to quickly show you how to get some geometry in there one way. But anyways, back to the superstructure. So what I might do is, again, I've screwed up. I didn't do this properly for the loop cuts. I apologize. I should have taken the time, but we're already getting over an hour. Is in edit mode and wireframe, I would add in a loop cut about where it starts and ends. We already did that, sort of. So what I would do is go to top view. Now we know where we can see this line right here is about where we can see that this whole area in here is roughly where the superstructure lies. Let's see if I can select this properly. Come on. This general area in there, those two faces. So what we don't have though is we don't have a loop cut on the top to show that. That's bottom faces we're looking at. So I would just guess with the loop cut maybe somewhere right about in there. Grab it over. Why it's not lined up is because of the shape of the hull. As you can see, it's making a loop cut while trying to maintain that geometry, that shape. And then I would make another one right at the start here. Double click G because I missed. And make another one right at the end. And now, again, I haven't done this the best of ways, but we could extrude that right up, and that is, you know, the rough start to our superstructure. Go to the right hand view, way too big, grab it along the Z, and we can still make loop cuts, as you can see, all the way through. Again, that's not the perfect way to do it. You can see that the loop cut doesn't continue, but that's the general idea behind loop cuts. And then, I mean, you could take your knife and try to cut it out manually if you wanted a really boxy shape. Turn on Z to cut through, enter. Will it cut through? No, not usually. Usually you need the extra geometry there. I mean, it's great for cutting out, say, from this vertex to this vertex. Enter, you can see how buggy you see that cut through, no problem. But since Blender's freeform cut tool is brand new, it's still not quite perfect. But anyways, yeah, then I might, you know, maybe add a loop cut in at the top of the bridge there and right on the side of the bridge here. And then maybe one back by this sonar dome or whatever, one about right there. And then it's the same deal as before, just get rid of the parts you know you don't need and start forming the shape the way it should look. So if we were to fill these all back in, we're maintaining quads, notice we can still make a loop cut through there if we wanted to move geometry around. However, the superstructure is generally very boxy. Just quickly do this though. Oops, I did add the loop cut in there accidentally. Get rid of that. Alright, so we have a general superstructure there. We have our little takeoff point, our little flight deck. Not the right way, but you know, it's a start. And then you do the same for the stern, and it's just slowly adding and removing detail. It takes skill and practice. And you know what? This isn't even the right way of doing it. I've ruined the topology. I can't make loop cuts all the way through anymore, as you can see. Oh, maybe I can, it just doesn't show. You can see I can make a loop cut all the way around because I've kept perfect topology, basically. I've kept quads everywhere. Now it's not showing it right in this face, but it's still cutting through it, so that's good. And same for this little flight deck here. That one I didn't do right. You can see it didn't cut all the way around, so that's the incorrect way to do it. But you can see at any point in the hull, like right here, we know that this needs, we know that this side, for example, needs to come in a little bit, so we can take these 2 points, say, grab them along the X, and bring them, well, maybe not those ones. I'd maybe alt right click and move that forwards. Put another loop cut right in there. Then I could take these ones, move them in along the X. I'm going to take all of this, because it's way off whack now. Just very, very roughly doing this. It's not the correct way. I would spend way more time. This is the ugliest boat I've probably ever made. But as you can see, then we get that general shape, right? So I've gone on way longer than I intended. I really don't have the time for this. Hopefully that gives you some general ideas. That's a triangle kind of made of a quad that shouldn't be like that. So I would maybe grab along the Z, snap to there. Holding down control, it turns on snapping while you're moving stuff. You know, that one too. Grab along the Z maybe to there, and grab along the Z maybe to there. And reference photos make a big help too. Going off the blueprints gets you the rough shape, but going off the reference photos gets you the detail after, you know. And then later, again, I would probably make certain parts different meshes, but later, you know, maybe I would make some loop cuts right on the bridge, you know, maybe throw one right down like that, you know, maybe it had a part that extended out right there, and, you know, maybe that one extended out, maybe this bottom row, or you know what, actually better yet, maybe this was like the bridge, and maybe it was inset and extruded in. But since we still have quads, notice we can still cut all the way through that, so we maintain our topology. So that's really about all I have to show. I've gone on way longer than I intended to. I'm not going to edit this video because I don't have the time. But yeah, it makes it a lot easier to cut the blueprints out in Photoshop. And you'll see if I go to left view, our boat doesn't line up at all, so I would indeed have to flip the left view blueprint around. But yeah, that's the basics of it. But you can see I've spent an hour and I've got a horrible looking carrier shape. But anyways, hopefully that's helped you out there. The user who contacted me on Skype, and usually I only go about 15-20 minutes for a call for help video, but the boat's interested me, so hopefully this helps you out. Anyways, thanks again for watching another video from the team here at blendertech.com. If you enjoyed this video and learned something, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/blendertech, that's at blender_tech, and Facebook at facebook.com/blendertech page, all one word. If you want a hard copy of our videos, let us know. If you dislike like this video for some reason, please tell us why so we can continually improve based on community input. We also take requests and call for help, so if you need something, just let us know or contact me on Skype at BlenderTech, one word. We will see you next time. Remember, create your way.